Hey everyone, this is Disc Junkie, and welcome back to the Mancave Madness. So today I finally have an update on the Red Room, and I don't know what happened, but I just realized that it's almost been 2 years since I actually made any kind of documentation in this room. And this is basically just because it's been one of those parts of the man cave which has been ridiculously difficult to sort of settle on how I wanted the layout of the shelves to be. And just, I had a rough idea when we first moved in, and when I sort of made the last video, I think in episode 18, I believe, was the last time you saw this room in particular. And this was shot back in, I think, in August of 2021, so almost 2 years ago. And basically I had this rough draft of what I wanted to do, but then I sort of just hit like a brick wall, and I couldn't really understand what else I wanted to do in here. So it's been a bit of sort of rough process trying to figure things out. But in today's video, we are going to check out this room in a bit more detail. I'm going to show you what I've done. But before that, we are going to take a look at a quick time lapse, and I'm actually going to rewind a bit extra just to give you a glimpse of what the room and the original process looked like when we first moved in, which was featured a little bit in the previous video from episode 18. But without further ado, let's just go ahead and roll the clip.
I'm about to go off like a weapon, fuel to the top, got a filled up engine. In my thoughts, obsession, I will not stop, no, I'm never second guessing. I got a God complex, haters love to hate, but I never feel pressed. Got a lot on my plate, but I never get stressed. I'll take all the pressure like I'm acing this test. Tear it up like I'm Jason. I see the world like it's ready for the taking. I see this place like a game I'm playing. Straight to the bank to collect my payments. No negotiations, it's my way, I was born impatient. And like a damn Freemason, I'll run this nation. They call me a god. 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 I don't know how to stop. I just go till I drop. Whether it's working or shots, give it all that I got. You can watch me work in my element. Anyone in the way is irrelevant. You wanna cross me, cool, not intelligent, cause I don't forget shit like an elephant. Go ahead and tempt me, put it on the line and you'll come up empty. If I got time, I'm deadly. Never caught off guard, no, I'm always ready. I got a hand real steady. Look me in the eye and you'll see no hezzy. About to get real messy. I'll put you in a grid 6 feet like Kenny. Call me a
And now when that's out of the way, let's just go ahead and check out the room in its entirety, so to speak. So I'm going to flip the camera like so and give you a first look at the finished room. So I decided to go with Billy bookcases on both sides of the room, which is something that I did show in the old video, like you just saw in the time lapse as well. And I'm really happy with this layout. As you know, I am a really big fan of symmetry, which I've mentioned many times in the past, but as you can see, I did opt for this in this room as well. We got lower style Billy bookcases all along the walls. Something else that I did in the previous video was to add these really long boards, which I just placed on top, and these basically go all along, and these are basically just laying on top of the Billy bookcases. There is a bit of a line here in the middle, so this is actually two pieces, and these little front pieces, which are just plastic, these corners which I've stuck on. These are also very sort of flimsy and thin. You can see I can actually move them, but you know, I just placed these here with like some sort of double-sided tape, so these can easily be removable if I want to. But I do really think that this detail just adds a bit more of a sort of professional look to the whole thing, and it also helps to remove this, which is pretty much what you would see otherwise. You would see this sort of double board. So I don't know, I might pick up another sort of plastic piece like this and add the same style over here, but I haven't really decided on when to do that. So in any case, this is the right side of the room. And as you can see, I've also done a lot of work with trying to categorize my stuff, which I'm not really 100% done with. I basically categorized it, but I haven't really alphabetized it to any sort of major extent. But I'm still really happy with the setup, and I tried to just play around a bit. I actually did quite a bit of work with trying to create new categories just like a couple days ago, because I felt like, you know, the typical sort of thriller horror stuff is a lot more fun to actually work with dedicated sort of subcategories, because you tend to buy movies which might be sort of favorite subgenres and things like that. Yeah, we're just gonna get into this as we move along through the collection. So I figured we might as well do like a walkthrough of the whole thing. I'm not going to get overly detailed, but I really want to show you most of these sort of display areas and talk a little bit about each section. But before we do that, just want to show you a little bit of the reverse side of the room. So this is what you see if you're standing over by the reviewing table, which I have behind me. You can see that I actually used the doors here on the farmost Billy bookcases. And this is because on the one side here, I'm actually using this for storage space. So this is just a typical Billy bookcase, but I did decide to place just, you know, some generic tapes in here, which is stuff that I don't really intend to keep. Maybe I'm just going to sell them. I'm also storing just some tripods down here, which I use for filming more reviews. So this is basically just a storage space. But as you know, big fan of symmetry. So on the other side here I also have doors, but this is for an entirely different reason. These doors actually reveal an empty space, which is just like the exterior parts of a Billy bookcase. I actually even placed a small sort of piece of wood down here just so you get the complete illusion of this being a real Billy bookcase, because it is a real Billy bookcase. I mean, I'm using the Billy side panels, I'm using a top panel, I'm just not using a floor board. And this is also loose, so I'll just remove this in case I want to sort of crawl in here. And another thing which I did, which you might have noticed in the time lapse, is that I actually went to work on this back wall here, which is actually leading into one of these little garret spaces. You know, I have a lot of garret spaces in the house in general, but you also saw some of this stuff in the previous house we lived in. It's very sort of common thing in these old typical countryside Swedish houses. And this is actually something which I have all along this wall. There is actually these small garret spaces, but I can't access them because I wanted to go for the Billy bookcase. I really wanted to use the space that I had for shelves, because I felt that I didn't really need any garret spaces. But seeing as I have one over here, I thought it would be fun to at least be able to access one garret space just for storage, and then I could also build this sort of secret little compartment where you open up the doors and, you know, you're not really realizing that there is an additional space in here. So now I have a bunch of boxes and stuff in here, but just so you can see, it's not really a big space at all. This is basically all it is. And I did something which I was contemplating a lot before I did it, but you can see that I've actually cut the walls all the way down to the floor. And I wanted to have a flat surface, so I put in a bit of a metal piece there. And this was because originally I had this idea that I was going to have one of my theater chairs in here, and I wanted to be able to roll that in and out through that opening in the back wall, you know, being able to watch movies in here or something. But I decided against that ultimately, and you know, with that, there wasn't as big a reason to have an opening in the back wall like that. But I had already done it, and it does really help if you're sort of trying to dig out and move boxes out. Maybe it's not something I would have done if I wasn't thinking about rolling chairs back and forth in here, But it is what it is, and this is what it ended up with. Now I also have this idea, which I talked about in the past, to basically open up this space even further, because the wall here is actually a wall which is completely adjacent to another garage space, which is in the other room, and I've mentioned this several times. So there is an idea brewing that I am at some point going to open up that wall, which will create a joint kind of crawl space where you can actually creep into this area and actually creep over and go out through a different exit in the other room. But that is just a fantasy for now, and for now this is just being used as a storage space. But without further ado, let's just go ahead and close this up. So I'm going to just place the little door back and then just close the doors back up like so. Okay, so that's the little secret space there, so you just know about it. But now let's go ahead and look at the rest of the room. So we are going to begin at this side, and the first thing you can see is that I have some sort of larger style box sets which I use for display all along the wall on the top here. And I've tried to use boxes which I feel are sort of coherent in not only are they fitting in terms of size, but for example, like when I have an action and adventure genre, I try to place action and adventure box sets, you know, within that area. It doesn't always work, but I've tried to do this as much as I can. So first we have a King Kong Peter Jackson production diary. There's also a small King Kong doll. We have a 7 box set, an old Matrix at the shake case in the back. We got a Usual Suspects VHS box, Indiana Jones trilogy from Korea, a limited edition DVD. Then we got some Matrix display toys. We got Natural Born Killers, and then we got the Dark Knight, moving over to Lock, Stock, Two Smoking Barrels. And then we get into the, you know, second shelf for action category. So just for the first one, this is the action and adventure genre, my first shelf. I'm not going to talk too much about all the stuff in the shelves. I just figured I will give you a slow pan to show you some of the stuff that's in here. And something which I did mention before is that I'm using the top 2 rows for DVDs and Blu-rays generally, and then the 2 lower shelves are basically for VHS tapes. And I will try to alphabetize these within the genre, but for now, you know, it's not completely alphabetized yet. So, moving along, we have the Lock, Stock, Two Smoking Barrels box set, an old VHS gift set, I believe. Feels like it's really been a really long time since I opened that. But yeah, that is a VHS box set. Then we have some Back to the Future stuff. We got a Mr. Fusion, aka a Kroppskoffina coffee machine, this is a real coffee machine. I just put the stickers on it to create the Mr. Fusion, which is what they used for the base design for the movie. It's actually based on a coffee machine, which they modified. Then we have a small Marty McFly figure there. We got another Dark Knight box set here. Got some Blade Runner stuff. Moving over to Minority Report. Then we have Mad Max box set. We got these classic Minority Report press kit tins. Then we got the little display sign. And I don't really remember if I talked about these display signs, but I basically picked up all of these little boxes, which are actually these miniature light boxes. You can put batteries in them and then they will light up. I haven't really done this because, come on. I'm not going to be running around flipping these on all the time anyway, so I'm just going to use them for display. But funny thing is that I actually picked up these light boxes from a store, a Swedish store, which is called Jysk, and it's basically like this typical sort of bed lining kind of store. They sell beds and, you know, just interior design and furniture and things like this. And they had these on sale. They were basically left over from like some sort of a Christmas sale or something. And apparently nobody bought them because they were actually quite cheap quality. So these were on sale, and I think I paid 10 Swedish crowns, which is, it's kind of like $1 basically for each of these boxes. So I ended up buying a whole lot. I think I bought 20 or 30 because I figured this would be such a cool little detail to create these little display signs, which I think are very sort of reminiscent of these classic big sort of movie billboards where they will place these sort of build these words using letters. So, you know, you get these letters which are very flimsy and you can move them around. They're very thin plastic. But I really do think it works for display purposes and also adds a very sort of nice classic cinematic vibe to the whole thing. So I'm really happy with this, and I can definitely recommend that in case you do find some really cheap light boxes. So that's a fun idea you can take and just run with if you want to. So here we got my next category, which is alternate future and post-apocalypse. So here I try to incorporate all the movies which are basically films about time travel, films about sort of alternate timelines, and just various sort of, you know, post-apocalyptic films, bizarre future stuff like Matrix, or, you know, yeah, I guess alternate timeline is a really good sort of summary of what I keep in here. And then we move over to something I've decided to call otherworldly stuff. And this is probably the most vague category, but it's also a really fun category to place things into. Because here I will have stuff like The Prisoner series or Inception, you know, vastly different stuff, but still this sort of like things where you're like in a dreamlike state, or you can't really trust reality. And there's obviously a lot of movies which would fit both of these categories. Like The Matrix is also very much in that sense, but in Otherworldly I try to include stuff which are a bit more mysterious and strange. I mean, I put a lot of David Lynch stuff in this category because his films in general just move in a very sort of nightmarish type atmosphere. So it doesn't really have to be part of the story. It can also be part of how the film in general is just filmed and how the visual design looks. And I mean, talk about a movie like Clockwork Orange. This is essentially a alternate future type movie, which I guess would place it over there. But then again, I just feel that that movie in itself is so otherworldly and strange that I really wanted to incorporate it here. So these are very fluent categories, and obviously a lot of the time you will have movies which fit into several categories. So if I have duplicate copies, I might actually place, you know, a movie in two different genres. I don't know, it's something I've been thinking about. So in any case, this is just a bit of a brief look at the otherworldly stuff. So you can see some of the movies I have in this category. And then I think we will move right along to the next one, which is space and underwater adventure. Now, this is a category which I honestly thought I had more movies in, but I kind of realized that most of these sort of classic space adventure stuff I have, like it feels like 50% of it is actually like Star Wars or Alien. And I think these movies are vastly different. Alien is much more of a horror franchise, whereas Star Wars is much more of a family kind of adventure. So I started looking at like, you know, okay, what kind of space adventure movies do I actually own? And I ended up with quite a small lot in here, but I still felt that this is one of those categories which I will probably be able to build on, and I will probably tend to buy more. But this became a bit sort of slimmer in terms of the size. You can see that I actually have a Billy bookcase which moves behind the other shelves. And this is not a style I'm commonly using. I don't really like to place shelves in this manner, but for this specific purpose, I think it works. You know, in a perfect world, I would probably wanted to end my shelves here, so I get like the natural corner. But, you know, this is what I ended up doing, and it was probably primarily because of time, I think, because I just didn't want to sort of upset this whole row of shelves again and sort of pull one shelf out and start modifying and cutting it down. Just like it's too much work, and just wanted to move along with this project. So I might do that in the future, modify it and actually move the shelf up to here, but we'll see. It's not something I'm doing right now. And so here we have space adventures, like I mentioned. And a lot of the stuff I will place here are things like Star Wars, but I've also incorporated a lot of sort of other things which aren't really movies even. I have a Lego thing which I built here, which is very much sci-fi inspired. I have a Marathon Trilogy game box set in the back. Here's another sort of Matrix box set which I have. So yeah, a lot of stuff, very fluent in terms of where I'm placing things. But then we have some Alien movies, we have The Abyss, Flash Gordon, anything I can find which was basically in the sort of space adventure category. And then, of course, we have some VHS at the bottom and some more Star Wars tapes in particular at the bottom. I'm trying to alphabetize these, so I will sort of try to alphabetize everything, but this is where I'm at right now. Then we get to another place in the collection, which I'm very fond of, very big fan of this subgenre. and that is the mockumentary and found footage genre. Now I tried to do some display work here, and up at the top we got some Blair Witch, we got some America's Deadliest Home Video box set. There's also a Lost box set, which people might be like, that's not found footage. And I know it's not, but this particular box set just oozes of mockumentary, because this is from the season 5 set, which they actually made like this fake design of a Dharma Initiative orientation kit, which I thought was so cool. And I love that stuff where you're sort of creating a mockumentary style element for something, you know, trying to create this fake box set from the world of the movie. I just think stuff like that's really cool, and I thought, so, you know, that sort of fits the genre, even though it's not really part of the genre. So I take a lot of inspiration from stuff like this, and I don't really, you know, it's just for fun. I mean, I don't care if it's a movie like I play something wrong. I go so much more by feel and what I like and how I like to show it. But I do have some display pieces here in the mockumentary found footage genre. There's various stuff. We got Poughkeepsie tapes. We got Hexan, classic film, which I consider it a mockumentary. I know a lot of people probably won't, but yeah, I do. And then there's some larger boxes in the back. Then we move down, and here is basically just a lot of Blu-rays from the mockumentary genre, some DVDs as well. And then further down we do have some videotapes as well. I haven't really filled up this shelf too much yet, but it is definitely a favorite subgenre, so I will definitely be picking up a lot more stuff for this shelf. Then we have one of these red little, little, what do you call them? In Sweden we just call them puffs. But yeah, so it's basically just one of these little square boxes. I just have this for storage. I don't even know what's in here. I think it's, a bunch of old dolls and action figures and stuff. So not really something we need to discuss. Moving over to the table here. This is something which is featured quite a lot in my videos. This is my classic reviewing table. It is a hydraulic table. There's no electricity for it, but it actually uses like this compressed air functionality. So it weighs a ton, but it's been with me for quite a lot of sort of moves between various homes. And it hasn't really been used by me. We used to have this in the office. So Anna had her working place in here actually for a while, which is why the table ended up in here in the beginning. But ultimately we decided to place her sort of home office at a different part of the house. And I'm really happy with this because I really wanted to have a dedicated space where I can shoot my videos. So this really became a very good solution for me. And beneath this is just a small shelf I threw together, built from some sort of leftover Billy bookcase pieces. And here's just a small box of Legos. I've recently taken up a minor interest in Legos, just for some small custom jobs. I'm not really sure. This is just a slight hobby on the side, which I'm not overly devoted to right now, but it's something that every now and then I, tend to go back to that. So I do have a small box of Legos there in case I do want to experiment and build something just for fun, I suppose. Then we move over to the other side of the room. Here we have another one, these little red boxes, and this actually houses pretty much all of my vinyl collection and my Laserdisc box sets. Then we have a new genre here, which is monster and paranormal horror. So this sort of started out with building a section which was kind of around the Alien franchise. That's sort of like the core of what I want to work with. I know this also featured in the Space and Underwater Adventure category, but here is much more focused on sort of horror movies with monsters and aliens. Like Star Wars does have a lot of bizarre creatures, but it's not really a horror franchise. So here I try to go for much more monster movies in that sense, where it's, scary monsters like Alien. And I also try to go for paranormal horror. So here you will basically have like demons, ghosts, zombies, what have you, sort of supernatural horror movies and monster movies in space, I suppose. Like I said, it's all very fluent. So I tried to do a bit of a display up here with some various alien pieces I have in my collection. I'm also incorporating a bunch of little action figures and toys and stuff, just because I think they are somewhat fitting. Doesn't have to be 100%. And you also saw that there were some figures over there, which I'd actually forgotten to mention. But like you see here, this has obviously nothing to do with the found footage genre. This is just a various of these Laserbeast toys which I had, and I wanted to find a place for them, get some more Star Wars figures, and yeah, so like I said, I'm not taking this super seriously. It's just trying to play stuff to make it look somewhat, you know, artistic and thought out. So in any case, some display stuff up here. We got some Alien box sets, got another little Lego robot, which I thought looked pretty cool. Got a zombie gnome up there. So yeah, we are definitely sort of checking all the boxes in terms of what the category is supposed to be. Then we got some classic VHS boxes for Fright Night and another movie which I forget the name of. But this is basically these coffin boxes which are live. So bit of a gothic alternate sort of demon type category as well. And then just looking at some of the stuff which I have in this particular shelf. Just go ahead and do a bit of a slow pan in case you want to look at some of the stuff. I can also just pull this away, give you a slight better view. So yeah, now you can get some idea, and you can always freeze frame this and want to, you know, read every tape or every title, but can't really stay on everything too long because then this video would never end. So next up we get to Outback Horror, which is obviously a really fun genre. This is where you'll find things like Texas Chainsaw Massacre, Wolf Creek, Eden Lake, you know, all these classic horror movies where, you know, you have people going from the city out to the countryside and essentially getting murdered or getting mixed up in cults or whatever. Love that kind of stuff. So just a quick look at what we have in this shelf. Just gonna do like a slow pan again. Once again, DVDs and Blu-rays at the top. Moving over to videotapes. And yeah, not a lot of videotapes at the bottom. So this is definitely one genre I'm still trying to fill up. And it was really difficult trying to go through all this and try to separate stuff based on subgenre. But it's also really fun. So I do really recommend it in case you want to sort of just change the mood of your collection. Because it really makes you think about how you categorize movies in a different way. And I think that this is also much more close to how you would have things be in a sort of classic rental shop, where you will have things based on categories, probably more typical categories like action, drama, whatever. But I feel that so much of my movies is not really fitting into those categories. Like, it's always difficult, and then I think it's much more fun to create your own categories and just go by that. So here we have serial killers and psychos, a lot of movies about serial killers, but that is definitely one of those topics which I keep coming back to because I just love a cool serial killer movie. And so yeah, I don't think there's much to say about this. It's basically horrors, slashers. Here we got some tapes at the bottom. So yeah, I'm just gonna move right along, and yeah, we should talk about some of the stuff up here, obviously. Over here we had an Event Horizon box set, we got Disturbia, the Outsiders series, we got Texas Chainsaw, Natural Born Killers. These are Laserdisc box sets, obviously, in case you don't know what the format is. And I think these are very fitting for this display. They're very much a perfect height for this particular shelf, so I tend to come back to Laserdiscs every now and then. Here we got 7, we got some Bizarro oversized promo VHS case. So it's not actually an actual release. This was just basically used for window display, I believe, in sort of classic video stores. So you have this really large oversized clam. Then we get to Usual Suspects box set again, and here I'm actually moving over to a new category, which is mystery thrillers. You'll also find The Sinner, which actually have a dual display on both sides, because I had 2 of these boxes which I felt were much more sort of, they work a lot better if you have them placed down, laying down like this, rather than having them stand up, because they can't really stand on their own. And just looking at the mystery thriller section, this is where you'll find movies which have like a big twist at the end, like, you know, things like Old Boy, Fight Club, The Prestige, and just generally, you know, movies which are sort of like thrillers, but also mysteries. So once again, very, very broad genre, but still feeling like this is something which, you know, all of these movies are so great. I love this kind of genre. Like, you will have movies like Brick, Memento, just so much cool stuff in here. I just love a good mystery. Moving over to the display shelf over here, we have Collateral, we have an Old Boy box set, we got a Dead President's Laserdisc, and then we actually have a vinyl record which I picked up recently for Tintin, an audiobook. But I don't have so much in the drama comedy section, or at least not things that I like to display. So this is why this genre or sort of section became a bit experimental. I mean, I consider Dead President to be a drama, I suppose, but you know, generally drama romance isn't really a big category for me, which you might understand based on the figures. Like, what the hell do I know about drama and romance? But I do have some drama romance kind of movies or dramas in general. So here is my small section for that. Just looking at some of the stuff I got in here. And I do tend to include drama in general in this section. So here you will even find movies like Requiem for the Dream, Trainspotting, and these movies which people might not think of when they think of drama, because drama, based on this, you might think that drama is much more of a lovey-dovey sort of rom-com kind of category, but I don't really own that kind of stuff too much. So this is much more of a darker drama, or anything that really has drama associated with it. But moving right along, we get to a bit of a more comedy section. Here I actually have one of these sort of Barbie clone sort of cars, which I don't really have a space for, so I thought that actually fitted here, because I realized that it's actually quite a sort of close match to this old VHS tape in the back with a movie with Dan DeVito and Joe Pesci, I can't pronounce that. Some VHS boxes here in the back. We got Pee-wee's Big Adventure. We got Naked Gun, or whatever it's called. Is it called Naked Gun? I don't know, the Leslie Nielsen film. And yeah, then we got some small figures, some Simpsons figures. Moving down, this is obviously my comedy section in general. This also includes a lot of animated stuff like Futurama, just, you know, a bunch of Seinfeld. And yeah, basically just mostly comedy stuff, I suppose. And this is also not a very big genre for me in terms of, at least not that I collect comedies. You know, I do watch a lot of comedies, but it's not really a genre that I'm... I don't think comedies in general come out in very collectible boxes for some reason. I don't know why, but it just feels like that. So, yeah. But let's not dwell on this. Let's just go ahead and move over to the last little corner here, where I have one of these really old VCRs, a top-loaded, from a company called Nordmende, and this is an absolutely beautiful machine. Sadly, I can't get it to work. I think I would have to replace the drive belts, which I haven't really figured out how to do yet. But I mean, it does work. I mean, you know, you can plug it in, it does get electricity. It just isn't really able to play tapes. But I just bought it for display purposes anyway, so it weighs a ton, and yeah, I just figured this is a quite nice place to display it. I did play some old sort of video violence kind of stuff. So we got Texas Chainsaw. We actually have a box set about video violence and the sort of debate in Sweden. And another VHS on video violence, also very sort of educational type tape. I love that kind of weird stuff. Then we have an old RS3000 in the corner here, which is a Super 8 style television, which actually projects Super 8 movies on a backlit monitor. So you can actually watch Super 8 movies on reels on this machine and actually get them projected on a screen like this. Then upstairs we got a couple small Super 8 boxes, because I wanted something Super 8 related for display here as well. And then moving over to some of the last stuff here, we have some small frames on the wall, which I just hung the other day. And here I decided to frame an old Batman magazine. This is a Swedish magazine, which is called Batman, or the Swedish Batman, which is Läderlappen, which literally translates to like a piece of leather. Just so stupid. So anyway, this is a magazine which is called The Hunt for the Dreaded Ra's al Ghul. This is actually something I found in the house when we moved in. Just one of these vintage magazines. I don't know if this is from the 80s, but I think maybe they're about. And I never really looked through the covers on these, and then I was just flipping through it, and I'm like, Ra's al Ghul, that's so cool. That's actually sort of tying in with like the Dark Knight franchise and stuff. Because I'm not really super huge Batman fan, but I thought that this was a really sort of cool cover design. I thought that's actually really nice to be framed that way. Then we actually have his not a self-portrait. It is a portrait, but it's actually not something I made. It's actually a drawing of me, which was made by my good friend Fred. And I thought it was really heartwarming and actually quite a good likeness to me. So I really wanted to frame this and have it hanging in the man cave. Then on the other side here is a small framing of a magazine. This is the Veckans Brott, aka Crime Weekly, the true crime magazine from the 80s, which I collect. This particular copy is actually earlier than that. That is from 1974. So I always think that these covers are really, really sort of stylized and cinematic. So yeah, really happy to include this. And I also have some of that stuff going on in the other room. So we will get back to that in a future video. But that is essentially it, except for, oh yeah, I did do a spontaneous, very sort of small little entrance shelf here, which, you know, my idea for this was very, very spontaneous, but I thought it would be fun to actually include this small shelf here, which was left over from stuff. So this is a bit shorter than all the other ones, you can't tell, but it is. And so I want to create a shelf here in the opening when you walk into the room and basically have it be like one of these classic video store counters. Now I know there isn't a lot of stuff on this, but this was the original idea for why I wanted to place this here, because I thought it would be cool and it sort of adds a bit of atmosphere to have this countertop. And I figured I will add more stuff. I might even expand on this, make it a bit more sort of a bit larger, so I can maybe place an old computer or something here, because I really wanted to create that feeling of a countertop, like a typical sort of cash register type area, but for now it just became this sort of quick and dirty display. And so I placed these big boxes here for display. This is an Action Force toy which I had from my youth, the Phantom X19, and then we also have some boxes down here. We have a promotional Coca-Cola attaché case, and we also have a Dark Knight Rises promo box set. And we can look a little bit at the back just so you can see it. Nothing special, very sort of custom built, quick and dirty. There you can see the back of the box. But for the bottom here, I actually decided to close this off just to give the shelf a bit more stability in case I need to move it around. But that is essentially it for the room, I think. And sorry about that. I realized I've been talking for way too long. It's been a while since I made a video where I talk this much, so sorry about that. But that is it for this video. I really hope you enjoyed this. I definitely had a lot of fun going through this room. Finally, it's one of the things which I'm thinking I should do, but then, you know, I couldn't really settle on it. And then I finally put up these two shelves here in the back, and I finally felt like, you know what, this room is ready to be shown to you guys. So, without further ado, I really hope you enjoyed this video. I want to say thank you very much for watching, and as usual, hope to see you all next time.